Let's go.
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
Peace. This is the Enemy's Public, and I am Bro.Nasir. I hope that everyone is enjoying this Sunday afternoon. This afternoon, I just like to pay homage to who I call the greats, brothers and sisters who have stood and acted on our behalf, brothers and sisters who have labored, studied in an effort to change the conscious level of our people and change the condition of our people. These brothers and sisters I hold in high regard, regardless if I agree with them or not. I hold them in high regard, regardless of who among us disagree with them. Until you do a fraction of what they've done, we should keep our criticism to ourselves. If they drop the ball, as most of us say, especially young people, if they drop the ball, we see it. We should pick it up, stop pointing at the ball, and pick it up, which is what most young people today do. Oh, the generations before us dropped the ball, but you see the ball, point at the ball, and don't pick it up. We have this habit of ungratefulness while sitting around doing what exactly? I'm not on the bandwagon of disrespecting my elders or anyone who has stood for my people, whether I agree with them or not. They did the best that they can with the knowledge that they had. While we have information at our fingertips, and all we're doing is knowing, not understanding, just knowing and harboring information and criticizing those who don't know instead of teaching them and giving them the understanding. With all we know, what are we doing? Some of us are past the age of when some of these brothers were gunned down. Most of us also wouldn't and didn't take a stand where we can put ourselves in imminent danger. Most of us, we have a lot of mouth, but nothing to show, will not put ourselves in harm's way on behalf of our people. Those with that negative mind would just criticize those who do put their lives and have put their lives in imminent danger. These are the greats. I didn't scratch the surface of who I can present, but this is who I will present this afternoon.
be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people. I'm not the pig. You got to make a distinction. And the people are going to have to attack the pigs. The people are going to have to stand up against the pigs. That's what the Panthers are doing. That's what the Panthers are doing all over the world.
You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution. You might run a liberator like Eldridge Cleaver out of the country, but you can't run liberation out of the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting. And if you do, you'll come up with answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain. You'll come up with conclusions that don't conclude. And you'd come up with people that you thought should be acting like pigs. That's acting like people, but moving on pigs. Damn it. There are not so many quotes in the world that could get any thinking mind thinking really helplessly deep, like the one you just heard. Those were the words from a great young man who, at the early age of 21, was hunted down and killed by the U.S. government in his bedroom.
You are the ones who are going to decide for yourselves what happened in that apartment on the morning of December 4th. You're going to decide whether or not Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were the victims of premeditated murder.
Now, as you open this, there's also, of course, a knob door in this one. As you open this door, there's blood behind the door. The top hole shows that the bullet was incoming.
They fired through the door and hit the brother through the door. The brother fell here. Most of the blood is dried up, but you can see a little bit of it there and a little bit of it on the floor. The brother was shot 4 or 5 times, so after they came through the door, they shot him again to make sure he was dead.
Mr. Montgomery, Dr. Constantino testified today that Mark Clark could not have struggled after receiving that shot through the heart. Now, in your mind, does this contradict the testimony of Officer Davis, who described a struggle?
Yes, it seems to me that that was a very startling thing. We also learned that the bullet, which was in fact recovered from Mr. Hampton's body, was a bullet fired out of a carbine by Officer Davis. So that indicates also that Officer Davis may well have walked into that back bedroom, contrary to his testimony, and fired a shot into the body of Fred Hampton at one point in time or other.
While he was sound asleep with his 19-year-old fiancée.
This is where our chairman had his brains blown out, and he lay in his bed, sleeping at 4:30 in the morning.
The great variance between the physical evidence and the testimony of the officers raises the question as to whether the officers are falsifying their accounts. Those officers fired 99 shots through the walls of an apartment where they knew people were sleeping. Murder is defined in Illinois as follows: a person who kills an individual without lawful justification commits murder.
He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running from anyone. He did absolutely nothing wrong.
Someone came into the room, started shaking the chairman. Said, Chairman, wake up, the pigs are laughing. Still half asleep. I looked up and I saw bullets coming from, it looked like the front of the apartment, from the kitchen area. When he looked up, he didn't say a word, and he didn't move, except for moving his head up. He laid his head back down to the side like that. He never said a word, he never got up off the bed.
His only offense was speaking up for himself and his people. That is all.
The person who was in the room, they kept hollering out, stop shooting, stop shooting. We have a pregnant woman or a pregnant sister in here. At the time, I was 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. My baby was.
Regardless to whose sentiment it is, anyone who kill our people is our enemy. We may not be their enemy as far as some of our sentiment is, but you only kill who you consider your enemy. We have people trying to convince us that we don't have enemies, while this happened all the way back in 1969 with the brother Fred Hampton. And the police have been murdering our people since their inception. And that's a vicious enemy, regardless of whose sentiment tell us that we don't have an enemy. That's backwards thinking.
Delivered in 2 weeks. Pigs kept on shooting.
First thing I remember when I woke up was a knock on the door, and it was only a matter of seconds. In fact, I'd say it was less than 5 seconds that I heard, shots. Now, the thing that struck me was that I not only heard shots, but I can see plaster coming out of the walls in my room. So I knew the bullets were coming through the room that I was in.
Federal grand jury comes to its conclusions. Unquestionably, the raid was not professionally planned or properly executed. And the result of the raid was 2 deaths, 4 injuries, and 7 improper criminal charges. In spite of those conclusions, the report then goes on to say, the physical evidence and the discrepancies in the officers' accounts are insufficient to establish probable cause to charge the officers with a willful violation of the occupant's civil rights.
This is the sad, suppressed story of Frederick Allen Hampton.
When they got together, you know, the Bobby Seals, yes, they got together with guns, and there's nothing wrong.
Excuse my technical difficulties. Peace to my brother Big Dog Philly OG. Thanks for tapping in. But Fred Hampton was a victim of state and federal assassination. The brother was assassinated because he told our people to not sit idly by and be victims of anyone. He told us to empower ourselves through our unity and our information. And he didn't teach hate. He taught self-defense. Anyone who's speaking against us defending ourselves is our enemy. Anyone tell us that we don't have an enemy is our enemy. We need to start questioning them of who sent them and what's their motives, because with the climate that we're living in today, and this happened in 1969, and somebody's trying to convince us that we don't have enemies, that's an enemy.
Wrong with that, because we need some guns. Black people need some peace. White people need some peace. And we are going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace, because the people that we're asking for peace, they're a bunch of megalomaniac warmongers, and they don't even understand what peace means. We've got to fight them. We've got to struggle with them to make them understand what peace means.
Only just 3 years ago, the month of January 2021, being more than 50 years after the brutal police killing of Hampton, hundreds of suppressed FBI documents related to the COINTELPRO program were released through a Freedom of Information Act request. Among those documents was yet another bonus letter, this one from the desk of J. Edgar Hoover himself. In the letter, dated 6 days after Hampton's murder, the FBI director thanked Roy Martin Mitchell, the Chicago FBI agent who orchestrated the raid, for his exemplary efforts.
I am certainly pleased to commend you and to advise you that I have approved an incentive award in the amount of $200 for your outstanding services in a
$200. That's what the brother's life was worth. He got a incentive award of $200. I know that's a while ago. 1969 is 55 years ago. But that's what the brother's life was worth. And you can only do this to someone who you consider an enemy and you have hate for. Now, J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, targeted this young brother who was 21 years old at the time. Targeted him, not because of some wickedness that he's done, but for what he was telling the people.
in a matter of considerable interest to the FBI in the racial field.
Did you hear that? The racial field, he says.
They had a racial field in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A racial field. Who would you have in the racial field besides racist in the racial field? Or some willing participant who look like us and will go infiltrate our organizations.
This was what J. Edgar Hoover had written to one of the chief organizers of the raid, implying that there was not an iota of remorse in the extermination of such a vibrant young life, because he was Black. The cold murder was something of joy, of fulfillment, of pride for the FBI, the police, and the U.S. government. This was pure evil assassination. Now let us start from the start.
Bobby Seale is going through all types of physical and mental torture. But that's all right, because we said even before this happened, and we're going to say it after this, and after I'm locked up, and after everybody's locked up, that you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution. Right. You might run a liberator like Eric Cleave out the country, but you can't run liberation out the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting. And if you do, you come up with answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain. You come up with conclusions that don't conclude. And you come up with people that you thought should be acting like pigs, just acting like people and moving on pigs. And that's what we've got to do. So we're going to see about Bobby, regardless of what these people think we should do. Because school is not important and work is not important. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
The racial progress in the U.S. was at its turning point. Activists won major civil rights battles, and the era of Jim Crow laws had come to an end. But at the end of the decade, there were some deep social and economic gaps for Black people across the country. Black Americans continued to face high poverty rates, poor housing, poor education, and unemployment, and they had little to no political representation. These disparities and an increase in police brutality had led inevitably to uprisings across the country. Many young Black activists were frustrated that the changes they'd been expecting weren't forthcoming, so they decided to stand up and fight for their rights. This is how the young man, Fred Hampton, emerged in the crazy picture of the Black struggle for equality. Frederick Allen Hampton, from the 30th of August, 1948 to the 4th day of December 1969, became an activist early in his life in response to the climbing pressure and crying state of the collective Black communities at the time. The youngest child of Francis and Iberia Hampton, Fred, was raised in the Chicago suburbs with his brother and sister. Among his family's acquaintances was Emmett Till, a Black child whom Iberia had babysat. In 1955, when Till was a teenager visiting relatives in Mississippi, he was licked by local white men. The Hampton family's connection with Till, along with their experience of racial inequity in their suburban community, made Fred keenly aware of racial injustice. This had left a great impression on him as a boy growing up, and had played a great role to the man he gradually became in a troubled community whose plights needed urgent answers.
Why do I have a lot of arrests? Because of harassment. Why is that harassment? Because the people that harass me have set up a problem that made me disagree with them violently, and they set up this problem in order to exploit me and other people like me. And why they want to get rid of me? Because I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people, and if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of us.
As a high school student, Fred Hampton was really concerned about the absolute freedom of the Blacks. In a quest to fulfill this dream, he made so many sacrifices for Black American community, even though he was young. He organized student campaigns for more Black teachers and administrators, pressed the school to select its first Black homecoming queen, and had even led protests at the Maywood police station. In addition to his portfolio, Hampton had organized trips for local Black children to the nearest racially mixed public pool, but it was about 5 miles, that is 8 kilometers away. At one particular rally, when store windows were broken and a shed set ablaze, protesters clashed with the local police. Who was responsible for the damage remains unclear, but Hampton and 17 others were at this point charged with disorderly conduct and mob action. That notwithstanding, the rallies eventually accomplished their goal. A goal for an integrated pool for Maywood, which was later approved, and the village board named the site the Fred Hampton Family Aquatic Center. This is to say, in the least, how passionately devoted Hampton was in the struggle for the betterment of the Black communities in the United States. In 1966, Hampton, by then a junior college student, was recruited to join the West Suburban National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP chapter, and eventually led the branch's youth council. After experiencing a series of negative, occasionally violent interactions with the police at rallies and demonstrations, he was frustrated with both the NAACP and the civil rights movement at large. So he parted ways with the by-the-book NAACP and before long joined the Black Panther Party as one of the Illinois chapter's original members. The Black Panther Party, founded 2 years earlier in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, had originally been intended to organize patrols of Black neighborhoods and protect residents from police.
There's no such thing as a fair fight when war has been declared against your people. The NAACP wanted to fight by the rules that was given to them that served to their detriment. And they didn't want to do anything without the consent of those who helped found the organization. You know, Negroes always asking Caucasians permission. That's the NAACP. That's the acronym for NAACP. Negroes always asking Caucasians permission.
Police brutality. Shortly, it evolved into a Marxist revolutionary group whose main aim was to pay reparations to African Americans for the centuries of exploitation they had endured, for exempting African Americans from the military draft, and for harming African American communities. Hampton had attained prominence in his late teens and very early 20s in Chicago as deputy chairman of the National Black Panther Party and chair of the Illinois chapter. His charisma and distinct quality as a promising leader was undeniable. On joining the Black Panther Party in 1967, Hampton had worked wholeheartedly for the group, devoting his time, resources, and energy to it. The group, seeing his zealousness, would not hesitate in making him the prominent leader and deputy chairman of the Chicago, Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. His enthusiastic sacrifices paved the way for the group's development. There had been so many known instances where Hampton portrayed his undying love for his fellow Black Americans. Some good examples include when he organized food pantries, educational programs, and recreational outlets for impoverished children, and how he also helped in bringing about a peaceful
The food program embarrassed the federal government because prior to that, they claimed that they couldn't afford to feed the children breakfast and lunch. And when the Panther Party started serving the children breakfast and lunch, it sort of embarrassed them because if this new organization can feed the children breakfast and lunch and the federal government can't, it's sort of embarrassing. And it shows that, that they do have the money, they just won't allocate it towards the schools. In particular, the schools where we went to.
coexistence among the city's rival street gangs. Hampton considered fascism the greatest threat, saying that nothing is more important than stopping fascism because fascism will stop us all. As time went on, the Black Panther Party had begun gaining some reputation down to the very grassroots of American society due to its active and welcome social endeavors. As a reason, the group had begun posing some serious concerns to the U.S. government. According to J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI then,
the Black Panthers were the greatest threat to the internal security of the country.
And how so? Just nothing but that undying rabid hate in a white man's soul to see the Black man rise above slavery and oppression. No sooner had the Chicago Black Panthers begun than the FBI took to monitoring their activity. Hampton was a possible suspect for what Hoover considered the threat of an emerging messiah.
They can't do anything that they've ever done as far as infiltrating our organizations, attempting to neutralize our organizations, and making our organizations what they are today as far as like so-called gangs. They couldn't have done any of that without one of us, because one of them couldn't come into our organization to infiltrate it. So they had to find one of us, someone who looked like us, who were willing to do it or put in a compromising position that they would do it, to keep themselves from being punished for a crime they commit. Instead of paying for the crime they commit, they sent them into our organizations to infiltrate them.
A leader who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement.
Peace to my good brother Dre Cos Music. Salute to you, good brother. Thanks for tapping in.
Malcolm X, prior to his assassination, Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad had also been among those targeted as possible agitators. The FBI had been present at the scene of the Chicago Black Panthers Foundation too.
You let some of the ignorant among us, the bobbleheads who listen to other bobbleheads, so they're bobbing their heads together. The aforementioned, you let some of these nitwits tell it, they're COINTEL themselves as opposed to being victims of COINTEL. Our people are backwards. Our people are very backwards, and we wonder why when we climb up, we don't reach down and pull each other up. We'll just climb up and be out of the hole by ourselves. Our people are backwards. We will call a victim of COINTELPRO because of some frozen of a reason, some Negroes who haven't done anything of activism besides be on a platform running their damn mouth about what somebody didn't do while doing nothing. But they would disrespect these elders who did things that they don't even have the fortitude to do.
Two, in the person of informant William O'Neal, an African-American teenager who a few months earlier had stolen a car, driven it under the influence of alcohol, and crashed it. In exchange for dropping the resulting charges against him, O'Neal, who had been appointed as the Illinois chapter security director,
he did all this to get auto theft and drunk driving charges dropped against him. He infiltrated the Panther Party, and Fred Hampton's death was a result of it. And what I don't like, what I really don't like, this happened in 1969, that William O'Neal got to live until 1990. He should have never got to live until 1990.
Provided the FBI with reports on Panther meetings, members' access to weapons, and the floor plans of their homes, with a special focus on Fred Hampton. In other words, they had compromised one of his own, a fellow black man, to snitch on him, and the Judas had fallen for it to save his own head. With Hampton as deputy chairman, the Illinois chapter launched community service projects in Chicago, like those the Panthers had initiated in Oakland, including a free medical clinic and a free breakfast program for children. Although the latter served as the inspiration for the USDA's expansion of its own free breakfast program and the creation of the National School Breakfast Program that was later authorized in 1975, Hoover had maliciously said that the inspiration came from the wrong source and would try all means mischievous to make it look so. They began to make life miserable for Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers.
And we got around 9 people still locked up in jail. We have 2 people still locked up in jail from
the inspiration to feed children breakfast and lunch in school came from the wrong source, because he was a part of a organization. Now, the Black Panther Party for self-defense, not aggression. The Black Panther Party for self-defense, because he was a part of that. Something that inspiring, something that beneficial. He say, J. Edgar Hoover, that it came from the wrong source. That's hate.
From July 30th shootout we had with the pigs, and we have around 4 or 5 more still locked up from the last ambush at the office on a week ago Saturday, I think. And these people are people that work hard.
Now, the police were actually doing what the brother said. They will be carrying out the business, and the police will drive past, actually do drive-bys in a police car. They'll drive past and they'll just shoot the windows out some of the Black Panther buildings. They'll shoot the windows out, doing drive-bys, agitating, declaring war on somebody who's not even fighting them. And look, the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And we should, it's not a right that someone can give you. If somebody attack you, that's a natural right. To me, it should be a natural instinct to defend yourself.
Hard for the party here in Chicago, and the main thing that we believe caused the vamp on the office leads right back to what you were talking about, the chairman being in Chicago. You know, people came into the office and piled up the supplies for the health clinic and burned it in the middle of the floor. This showed some type of megalomaniac tendencies that these people have, because they're obsessed and they're crazy with power. They came into there and they ripped the brothers off out of the office and then beat them brutally when they got them outside the office. Brothers did not shoot at them like they claimed they did. They said that somebody in the block was sniping, and these drunkard bastards went up in the office and burned the whole office down because some people were shooting at them.
And that's exactly what they used to do. The police would be drinking on duty, drinking the liquid courage. That's what they do. They drink the liquid courage, and then they'll go carry out these drive-bys on the Panthers' headquarters in whatever city they're in. And then they'll write in the report that the brothers shot at them first. But when they do the investigation, they find that no bullets came out of the place. All the bullets came into the place.
Main issue is that the chairman's down there at the federal building, and the chairman's being tried illegally because the chairman is not a criminal. As a matter of fact, he's just the opposite of a criminal. He's just as far from being a criminal as that judge is from being a teenager, because he's the father of our Breakfast with Children program. He's the father of our free health clinic. And this is not, if this is criminal, then we all want to be criminal. If it's criminal to feed children that are hungry, if it's criminal to start a program that says that the only prerequisite that people have to have to involve themselves in this program is to be hungry, then we're going to continue to be criminal. If it's criminal to say that the only prerequisite that people have to have when they want free medical aid is that they be sick, then we intend to continue to be criminal.
In Richmond, Virginia, FBI agents had begun visiting houses, warning parents that the Panthers were using the breakfast to teach racial divisiveness. In San Francisco, California, a rumor had spread that the food was contaminated by venereal disease.
That stands today. Whenever one of us say truth about this vicious, open, and consistent enemy, we always have some Negro to try to offset what has been said about this open and consistent enemy. And they will actually go out and try to prove otherwise. They will actually literally look in a needle in a haystack to try to find a good one, or what they consider a good one, and hold them up. See, I found one. When that good one should be jumping up and down, making his or herself seen as the good one. They shouldn't have to be found. They should make themselves seen.
A former Panther claimed that the night before the Chicago Free Breakfast program was supposed to begin, the Chicago police had broken into the church where the Panthers stored the food, and they'd mashed up all the food and urinated on them. The program's opening.
Can you imagine that? See how wicked that is? The food that we're going to feed the children, they broke into the church where they stored the food, mashed up the food, and urinated on the food. This is not surprising. I'm just, giving the message. This is not surprising because this is their very nature. If you don't, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, just keep living and wait your turn, because that's what it seems like to me. Those who turn a blind eye to who our enemy is, just keep living and wait your turn and walk this world blindly. One of the general orders for us is to walk our post in a perfect manner, keeping always on the alert. Okay, don't walk your post in a perfect manner and don't be alert, and see what you have. See what happens.
Was delayed, but the vandalism inspired support from the community. Hampton had used his talent as a communicator to create what he termed a rainbow coalition, an alliance of the Panthers with other groups organized around racial, ethnic, or ideological affiliation, bringing together groups that otherwise would have had almost no positive contact, including the Puerto Rican Young Lords Association.
This is what made Fred Hampton dangerous, because those who they wanted to pit against him and the Panther Party, they were forming alliances and standing with each other. And this is like the work of who will be considered a Messiah. Those who can unite the people on one accord, cultivate the people, and move the people. This is what you call a movement.
The Poor White Young Patriots Organization, and the Blackstone Ranger Street Gang. The Rainbow Coalition provided aid to low-income citizens by combining the member groups' varied resources.
We got to face some facts, that the masses are poor, that the masses belong to what you call the lower class. And when I talk about the masses, I'm talking about the white masses, I'm talking about the black masses and the brown masses and the yellow masses too. We've got to face the fact that some people say you fight fire best with fire, but we say you put fire out best with water. We say you don't fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity. We say you don't fight capitalism with no black capitalism. You fight capitalism with socialism.
These were Fred Hampton's words of solidarity, the philosophy behind his wit, which had turned him into a unifier of diverse skin colors, cultures, and peoples at that time. Fred had people doing push-ups in the morning, prepping food for the community, and giving people a purpose who never had one at 21 years old. As Fred's influence began to grow, so did the desperate desire of the U.S. government to destroy him and the Black Panthers even quicker. Hampton, along with other Panthers, had become identified as a radical threat by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI had begun disseminating false information about the groups Fred belonged to and placed a counterintelligence operative, also called COINTELPRO, on the local Panthers. A hearing on FBI misconduct.
I don't understand. This stands today. Some of our people would believe anything that this enemy say about one of us. They'll put it out on their media, multi-ethnic destruction in America. They'll put it out, and a lot of us will see that as truth and see our own brother and sister through the eyes of our enemy. We actually believe anything that this wicked enemy, this system is a system, it's systematic. We'll believe anything that this system put out about one of us. We'll look for information, we'll find something disparaging, and we will go out and we'll gladly and loudly say this about one of our brothers and our sisters, not even knowing, not even fact checking, not even knowing that is the truth, but we'll go out and we'll say it about that brother or that sister.
Uncovered documents containing directives to destroy the Panthers' Breakfast for Children program and to disrupt the distribution of the Black Panthers newspaper. In an attempt to bring down Hampton and the Black Panther Party, so many accusations were being leveled against him and the party. The U.S. government had begun using the media, which obviously was at their beck and call, as a weapon against them. They had begun spreading so much news through every available news vendors with all kinds of mind-troubling headlines like,
"That's why today, to this very day, we cannot trust the media because it's state sponsored and they're going to spin it their way. Because if they didn't spin it their way, they would say something disparaging about the United States foreign policy. They'll say something about that. They'll say something about the bad deeds that the United States do all over the world. They'll talk, they instead of just reporting what happened, they'll tell the truth about what happened, but they don't do that. You'll never hear them saying, "Oh, that's a shame how the United States bombed this country back into the Stone Age." You'll never find the news, the media, the newspapers, any sect of media saying these things because it's state sponsored.
Oakland policemen slain in gunfight with Negroes, armed Black Panthers invade state assembly chambers, Black Panther chief on trial for murder, Black Panther fight kills police officer, the gun-wearing Black Panthers, and so on. Fred Hampton was arrested on so many occasions.
They'll report all this, but they'll never say that the police were the aggressors and the Panthers defended themselves. They'll never say that. It's the truth, but they'll never say it.
Some of which included his arrest in 1969 with an old traffic warrant, a court order requiring a person's arrest and commanding their appearance before the judge. Later that year, he was also arrested and went on trial for stealing ice cream bars in the Chicago suburb of Maywood in 1968. Hampton and the other members of the Black Panthers Party tried convincing the court that he was innocent of the accusations, that it was all a setup. But after
what's crazy about it, they'll make these fictitious charges and they'll put him in jail and they'll make it as silly as possible. Can you imagine Fred Hampton? Peace to my good brother Blue. Thanks for joining me this evening, brother. Can you imagine Fred Hampton? He's locked up, and the media, how they spin it and how ridiculous it is. He went to jail for stealing ice cream bars. They want to make it so ridiculous and embarrassing to the brother.
After all said and done, he was convicted and sentenced to 2 to 5 years in prison. The tension between the Panthers.
They couldn't find nothing that the brother was doing illegal. So they'll put some ridiculous charges as stealing ice cream bars on him and then convict them and put him in jail for 2 to 5 years.
Panthers and police also rose when 2 officers and a Black Panther were killed during a November 1969 shootout. A gun battle in which 18 were injured, 2 police officers and a 19-year-old Black Panther were killed. Authorities felt Hampton's role in the party linked him to the police deaths, though he was out of town when the confrontation took place. However, Fred survived the accusations, harsh treatment, COINTELPRO and governmental smear campaigns, but not the assassin's bullets. Early in the pre-dawn hours of December 4th, 1969, a People's Gas truck had pulled.
This is the origin of the December 4th movement. When you hear people refer to the December 4th movement, they're talking about this day when William O'Neill gave Chicago PD and the FBI a diagram of where Fred Hampton will be sleeping. And he cooked dinner for all the Panther members, and he spiked Fred Hampton's drink to put him to sleep so he wouldn't be able to fight back when the police came to ambush them.
Pulled up in front of an apartment building at 2337 West Monroe Street in the west side of Chicago. 14 plainclothes Chicago police officers quietly filed out of the undercover truck, armed with pistols, a shotgun, a machine gun, and a detailed map of their target, an apartment occupied by leaders of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. The map clearly identified the bedroom of Fred Hampton, the 21-year-old chairman of the Chicago Black Panthers, who was asleep beside his 8-month pregnant fiancée.
That's why I say, when people start saying that victims of COINTELPRO are COINTELPRO, and they start undermining what these brothers and sisters have done, this young man was 21 years old. He could have been doing anything, except he was a serious young brother standing and acting on our behalf. He should be respected. Nobody sitting in front of a damn computer should utter a word of disrespect towards any of these brothers. Until you put your camera on you and go out and do some activism, shut your damn mouth.
Who was only 19. It was 4:30 a.m., and at such an hour of the day, the police had kicked down the front door and started shooting. Ballistics reports later showed that they fired more than 90 times including machine gun rounds through exterior walls and windows. When the volley of bullets finally stopped, 4 of the young Black Panthers inside the apartment lay shot and critically wounded, and 2 had been killed. The first was Mark Clark, who reached for his own shotgun before taking a bullet through the heart. The second was Fred Hampton, gunned down in his bed. The police were acting under the orders of Edward Hanrahan, the Cook County State's attorney, who held a press conference claiming that his officers were surprise attacked by the Black Panthers.
Now, I don't understand how they would even get this investigation off the ground to say that they were surprise attacked. How in the hell could somebody surprise attack someone at their own place? These people were at home. So if anybody was surprising somebody, it would have been the FBI and Chicago PD. But back then, they could say anything and get away with it, these cops. They could do that today, though, but they could say anything and get away with it. But the FBI and Chicago PD lost the lawsuit, and they had to pay the Hampton family for this state-sponsored and federally sponsored assassination.
As the police tried to execute a search warrant for illegal weapons in the apartment.
The immediate violent criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party,
said Hanrahan. But this was all just cold, unfeeling lies of devils in human form. While it didn't take long for Hanrahan's account to fall apart, it took more than a decade for the whole disturbing truth to come to light. Not only was the killing of Hampton and Clark a cold-blooded assassination of 2 militant Black activists, but documents later revealed it was coordinated by the FBI as part of a secret program to neutralize and destroy the Black Panther Party, which FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover privately called the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. And Jerry, Hampton's fiancée, had sadly stated that after the police removed her from the room, they said Hampton was barely alive. She then heard 2 more shots, followed by the words, "He's good and dead now."
The next thing I remember was someone in our room shaking Chairman Fred. Chairman, wake up, wake up. Plaster was flying off the wall. You could smell the cordite from the gunshot. If you've ever been under gunfire, 5 minutes is 5 hours. To you, it seems like forever. The shooting started back again. Then another voice unfamiliar to me said, "He's good and dead now." I knew they were talking about Chairman Fred.
He's good and dead now.
That statement alone is a confirmation that Fred Hampton was marked for death all along. And that mission, at that moment, was accomplished. It must have been really gruesome, the pain Akua and Jerry, Fred Hampton's fiancée, had to go through. She was only 19, too tender for such a cruel, ungodly experience. In 1 minute, she was lying on the same bed with her fiancé, who was hale and hearty, and in another minute, he was gone to a path of no return, leaving behind their 8 months unborn child, one he may have only imagined but would never get to see his face again. William O'Neill, who at this point was Hampton's trusted friend and bodyguard, and was in charge of security on the night of Hampton's murder, was widely believed to have drugged Fred Hampton so as to ensure that he would not be able to defend himself. He had also provided the floor plan of Hampton's apartment to the FBI, which made it easy for the police to track his position. No illegal weapons were found during the raid, but the 7 Panthers who survived, 4 of whom were injured, were arrested for aggravated assault and attempted murder. What oppression in the world could be worse than that? As the apartment was not sealed off, the Black Panther Party subsequently offered tours of the scene. Though the police account was that they had been responding to gunfire, this story was debunked when what had been described by law enforcement as holes created by Panther bullets were shown to be actually nail heads. Charges against the Panthers who had survived the raid were dismissed in 1970 after a critical investigation on the case. In that same year, a federal grand jury investigation also found that police had fired 82 to 99 times, with only 1 shot coming from those in the apartment, which was in self-defense. Cook County State's Attorney Edward Hanrahan, who had directed the raid.
Pardon me, I was muted. This lets us know that Chicago PD has always been corrupt. From 55 years ago in 1969, all the way to this moment. They're just as corrupt today as they were back then.
Was indicted for obstruction of justice in 1971, along with an assistant and 12 officers from the raid. However, no convictions resulted from any of these charges. By 1972,
no convictions, but they paid the family off in the millions.
Hanrahan was voted out of office. This was a harbinger of shifting Chicago politics, leading to the election of the first Black mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington, in 1983. That same year, a settlement was reached for the city of Chicago, Cook County, and the federal government to pay $1.85 million to survivors of the raid and to Hampton's and Clark's families, with a ruling that stated the government had conspired against the Black Panther Party and violated the civil rights of the plaintiffs. Really? Would this bring back the lost souls?
Somebody should have went to jail, and I think worse should have happened to them for doing what they did to the members of the Panther Party.
Would this wipe out the scars that they put on the minds of the young ones? Will this money heal the ailing hearts of those parents whose kids has only been killed for nothing? How about the young women who have been turned into widows from very similar cases at a very young age? However, we are going to close this video with a heart-touching statement by Ogre. Every time the economic system is challenged by poor people reclaiming what was stolen from them, it's met with brutal violence. From the diggers in England who had their life based on common land stolen from them, to striking miners.
A thief do not want you coming to them telling you or telling them that you have what's mine. A thief don't like that. If a thief stole something from you, they don't want you coming trying to get it back. And they don't want you telling the truth contrary to their lies. Because if you tell the truth contrary to their lies, you won't be able to steal. They won't be able to steal from you anymore. And they won't be able to steal from anybody, because if you show them as a liar, nobody's going to believe them.
To striking workers in Detroit and Michigan, to poor Blacks in the South, from Fred Hampton, who was uniting across racial lines in Chicago, to MLK, who was creating a poor people's movement across racial lines, from indigenous people to Oka in Chiapas, Mexico, overseas like Cuba, which was the greatest victim of terrorist attack in history, to Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The list goes on and on. The only way to stop this is solidarity and mobilization, and keep on fighting. Someday we will build a giant monument to Fred Hampton in Chicago, because eventually justice and humanity will win. 50 years after Hampton's tragic death, his words continue to speak to the lives of marginalized classes, races, and castes across.
We're going to pay homage to the next great, someone else who I think is one of the greats.
His Black brothers and sisters have suffered down the years. He has been even more bitter about America's Jews. But even though many Americans, black and white, perceive him as a racist, this leader of the Nation of Islam, with his million-man march last October, made himself a force to be reckoned with. In person, this rather private man can come across as earnest and reasonable in professing his desire for a true reconciliation between the races and religions in America. But almost everything he says has been drowned out by the current controversy over his recent meetings in the Middle East with sworn enemies of the United States. Tomorrow, Minister Farrakhan embarks on a nationwide tour to explain his motives for that trip and to blunt the criticism that has led the Justice.
See, they want us to make their enemies our enemies. That's the slave mentality when you make somebody's enemy your enemy.
Department to investigate whether he must now register as a foreign agent. For me to register.
You're absolutely right, Brother Blue. He was. And the minister actually distanced himself from Obama because he didn't want to mess up his chances of becoming president. All the minister had to do to mess things up for him was just show video footage and pictures of them together.
Register as a foreign agent is to give America control over what I say. And that's what America wants, is control over what I say. In the foreign agent law, you can't influence public opinion. That's my business, to influence public opinion, especially when liars are deceiving the American people. So no, I will never register as a foreign agent because I'm not that.
Farrakhan says he does not worry about what the government thinks of his traveling to Tehran, where he spoke to millions of Iranians celebrating the 17th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, an uprising that led to the taking of the U.S. hostages, or about his much publicized visit to Baghdad to confer with Iraq's Saddam Hussein. On his return home to Chicago in February, he would explain himself only to his brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam.
My job was to get up quickly and get out of America and connect the Nation of Islam and Black America to Africa, to the Middle East, and to the Muslim world.
Greetings to my sister Sharon Walker. Thanks for tapping in. Appreciate it.
That was why I had to go.
And one of the first places he went to was Libya, where he received a warm welcome from Muammar Gaddafi.
The Libyan news agency, JANA, reported Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi saying the following: "Our confrontation with America used to be like confronting a fortress from outside. Today we have found a loophole to enter the fortress from within." You are a loophole for Muammar Gaddafi, who you say offered you $1 billion, who has in the past given you $5 million?
He offered me more than $1 billion. He offered me the wealth of the nation of Libya behind the Nation of Islam.
You were a loophole for Muammar Gaddafi?
Well, I don't know what he means by loophole. Maybe you ought to invite him on 60 Minutes.
I have.
And ask him. But certainly, I can't be a functionary for Muammar Gaddafi. However, I would be most happy to detail my conversation with him if I'm subpoenaed before Congress.
That subpoena to talk to the Congress about his travels to America's enemies in the Middle East has not been issued. Nonetheless, I reminded him,
he didn't go to Egypt, where Sadat and Begin made peace, a Muslim and a Jew. Didn't go to Jordan, where King Hussein and Shimon Peres have made an accord. Didn't go to Israel, where Arafat and Rabin finally shook hands, instead of just going to a lot of dictatorships. To go to a democratic country where Jews and Muslims are beginning to reconcile might have been a wonderful sign for you, Minister Farrakhan, to show to the world.
If they're on the road to reconciliation, that's fine. But, you know, there's also the possibility of my being assassinated overseas. Egypt right now is a place where it's very, very volatile. And I thought that in that surrounding, it might not be the best place for me at this time. If I went to Israel, I don't think Israel would be the best place for me to be at this time, considering the view that most Jews have of Louis Farrakhan.
You go to Nigeria, which is, if not the most corrupt nation in Africa, and it could be the most corrupt nation in the world, Minister Farrakhan.
Oh, now, Mr. Wallace.
It is the most corrupt nation that I have ever covered. I've been there 25 years ago, and I've been there as recently as last year.
Fine. So what? 35 years old. That's what that nation is. Now, here's America, 226 years old. You love democracy, but there in Africa, you're trying to force these people into a system of government that you just have accepted. 30 years ago, black folk got the right to vote. You're not in any moral position to tell anybody how corrupt they are. You should be quiet and let those of us who know our people go there and help them get out of that condition. But America should keep her mouth shut wherever there's a corrupt regime, as much hell as America has raised on the earth. No, I will not allow America or you, Mr. Wallace, to condemn them as the most corrupt nation on earth when you have spilled the blood of human beings. Has Nigeria dropped an atomic bomb and killed people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Have they killed off millions of Native Americans? How dare you put yourself in that position as a moral judge? I think you should keep quiet, because with that much blood on America's hands, you have no right to speak. I will speak because I don't have that blood on my hand. Yes, there's corruption there. Yes, there's mismanagement of resources. Yes, there is abuse. There's abuse in every nation on earth, including this one. So let's not play holy to moralize on them. Let's help them.
I'm not moralizing. I'm asking a question, and I got an answer.
Why would you put it as the most corrupt regime in the world? That doesn't make sense.
Can you think of one more corrupt?
Yeah, I'm living in one. I'm living in one. Yes, you've done a hell of a thing on this earth, so you should not be the one to talk. You should be quiet when it comes to moral condemnation, in my judgment. I didn't mean to be so fiery.
No, that's good. That's good.
That's my passion.
I first recognized the passion of the Black Muslim movement and Louis Farrakhan way back in 1959 when I anchored a broadcast entitled The Hate That Hate Produced. The Black Muslim meeting we filmed included a mock trial, a kind of passion play, where the white man was judged for crimes against the black race. The voice you will hear is that of...
This is the trial of Organa. This is what this is, the trial of Organa, when the Caucasians were put on trial and found guilty for crimes of humanity. I'm going to redo the trial of Organa. I'm going to put the backwards Negro on trial, because the backwards Negro need to be on trial because they're slowing and they're stunting our progress.
That of the prosecutor. This tape will show you why white America was worried about the black Muslims.
I charge the white man, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, with being the greatest murderer on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest peace breaker on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest adulterer on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest troublemaker on earth. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you, bring back a verdict of guilty as charged.
I'm sure you remember that. You wrote it.
Yes.
And you believed that then?
Oh, yes, I believe it now. History is not false. If he says that the white man did all these things, I did not write the white man's history. That history is written in murder in the bloodshed of the darker peoples of the world, and even in the bloodshed of your own people.
Back at that time, Elijah Muhammad, the man whom you revere and still regard as the Messiah, in a certain sense, no?
Yes.
He wanted a separation. I couldn't even talk to him. Do you still believe in separation of the races?
I believe, Mike, that if we can't get along in peace, then we should separate. We have serious differences that are exacerbated now over time between black and white. The question that we have to answer, are those differences irreconcilable?
Are they?
I don't know. Have we tried as hard as we could to reconcile them? And if we have, and we cannot, then separation would be the best answer.
But you are suggesting that it's basically the white man's fault.
Oh, no, Mr. Wallace. I'm not going to say that. Because justice would not be served if I said it was all the fault of white people.
Reason that
we have to take some blame in this ourselves. As black people, we can't sit around waiting for white people to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. And our failure to do this is our fault. White folk have done bad by us in the past. Yes, that is true. And they do some bad by us today. But if we did better by ourselves today, we could help to reconcile this difference.
Farrakhan's call for black men to do better for themselves was the theme of his Million Man March. Last fall, he called black men from all across America to come to Washington for a Day of Atonement. And they came. His message? Change your lives. But after the march, he says, he was depressed, somehow sad, hurt by the mainstream media who he felt failed to give him proper credit for his extraordinary accomplishment in organizing the march. He withdrew to the Nation of Islam's compound in Phoenix, Arizona. He disappeared from the public eye for almost 3 months. Then he reemerged for that tour of Africa and the Middle East. To observers like Dr. C. Eric Lincoln, a distinguished black historian and professor emeritus at Duke University, who has studied the Nation of Islam since the 1950s, Farrakhan's trip squandered a great opportunity. Professor Lincoln told me he was disgusted with your trip to the Middle East and to Africa. He said, he blew it, you. After the Million Man March, he feels that you had what you were after. You had put yourself in a position as a leader.
How could one determine what someone's motives are? How could one determine what someone's after? That's speculation. If you wanted to know what he was after, what his motives was, you should ask him. See, that's what Negro journalists do when their paymasters have them doing this ambush journalism on our brothers and sisters. And we're going to see this on the next video that I show with another brother I revere, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Of the entire black community in America, which you had never had before, and then that you just threw it away with the trip to Africa.
You know.
Now, this is from a man,
yes,
scholar, been a guest in your home,
yes,
loves you and your wife.
A scholar only means that you study. That don't mean the person is special. It only means that he studies.
And I love him. Let me say this. There are many people like Dr. Lincoln who think just like that. They were hurt because they watched my struggle. And they said, now he has arrived, okay?
Right.
And they felt not only that I had arrived for me, I had arrived for them because secretly they have wanted to embrace Louis Farrakhan. And just as they were about to put their arms around me. I went to Africa and the Middle East, and to quote them, I blew it.
You spoke, in their view, against your own country.
You know, some of your best patriots are those who never went along with the government position. Listen, everyone that stepped back from me, they didn't run away. They're behind a tree looking. Is he gonna make it? How's he gonna get out of this one? Oh my God, I'm not a politician. I don't do what people think I should do. I do what God inspires me to do. Which one of these leaders would have asked me to call for 1 million men to come to Washington? Not one. That was an inspiration from God that I followed, and they all applauded. Great thing you did. God inspired me to get up and leave this country, and before long, those same critics will say, I was wrong, Farrakhan.
I want to show you now, Minister Farrakhan, an excerpt from your speech, Savior's Day in Chicago, a couple of months ago.
I know you want to kill me, but I just raised the price. You want me dead, but you're going to pay a price to get that result.
Who wants to kill you? Why?
I believe that conversation is raging right now in government circles because I appear to be interfering with America's foreign policy objectives in Africa and in the Middle East. They want me kind of silenced or muzzled, and if they can destroy my credibility, as they did Martin Luther King first, take him down in the eyes of his people and then assassinate him. I don't believe that America is beyond that. I believe it's being discussed right now in the White House. I believe it's being discussed by certain members of Congress. How are you going to deal with Farrakhan? Yes, I presented you with a dilemma, but I'm warning America. I'm not Martin Luther King. I'm not Malcolm X. I'm in a little different time frame. And I think you would be wise to see if God is with me, and if God is with me, you would be well to leave me alone.
More from Louis Farrakhan on Mike Tyson and rape, on Malcolm X, and on his relationship with America's Jewish community when we return.
Now we're going to go briefly to Malcolm X, another great who I revere. Speaking on police brutality.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk. Stop sweet talking it. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
Now we're going to go to Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. I believe this is Donahue's show. It's not in its entirety.
About Colin Ferguson, the man who shot a Jamaican black male who shot 6 people on the Long Island train. Mr. Muhammad speaks.
Where they set black inmates up in these jails and penitentiaries, and in particular there in Nassau County, and pulled all the black officers out and the black inmates so they could jump on Brother Colin Ferguson, because they were mad with him for catching the Long Island train and killing all them white folks. I love Colin Ferguson. I have no official position, so I can say I love him.
You love a man who randomly killed 6 people on a commuter train?
I love Colin Ferguson just as much as the masses of white Americans love General Schwarzkopf, General Westmoreland, General Patton, General MacArthur, and Eisenhower. America awards her killers, and they get ribbons and stripes and bars. I'm sensitive to the pain and suffering of the loss of life on that train, but I'm one of the rebellious slaves. And so when black people stand up out of pain and suffering and frustration, I understand after 500 years.
You also, you talk about the response of some African Americans to, for example, the book which attempts to prove that the Jews are involved in the slave trade. I'd be happy to let them see that. You talk about when white folks can't defeat you, you said in your speech at Kane, they'll always find some Negro, some boot-licking, butt-licking, buck-dancing, bamboozle, half-baked, half-fried, sissified, punkified, pasteurized, homogenized nigger that they can trot out in front of you. I would ask you, Mr. Muhammad, is Jesse Jackson a boot-licking, homogenized nigger?
To the best of his ability, I believe he tries every day to do that.
Here you are mocking Jesse Jackson at a speech, I believe this is Howard University. Roll the tape.
Oh, boot-licking, buck-dancing, scratching, shuffling, messy Jesse Jackson. To keep. I am a somebody. I am a somebody. Keep hope alive. I am a somebody. I don't rightly know who the hell I am, but I am somebody.
Yeah. Are you an entertainer, or are you a committed person to black people?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I believe that the liberation and salvation of the black nation must be brought about by black people gaining a thorough knowledge of self after our 500 to 6,000 year Holocaust, where we have lost over 600 million. And so I believe that that education process must be a process of two steps: inspiration and information. So I seriously give information, but black people are a people of rhythm and spirit. So I also give inspiration.
From your speech at King College in 1960, Chief Luthuli, the head of the ANC, received a Nobel Peace Prize, you reported to your audience, reminded them, for nonviolent struggle. Just like Mandela just received it with F.W. de Klerk. How could you stand with your oppressor and your enemy and receive the Nobel Prize for nonviolent struggle? You do not support, then, Nelson Mandela's strategy in the struggle to free black people in South Africa?
Let us first of all be very clear here, Phil. Nelson Mandela is my brother.
So
he is
Jesse
a member
Jackson.
of the family, and so is Jesse, and Jesse is a very brilliant man. We just want him to return home and stop being used by the enemy and the oppressor against his people. Now back to Brother Nelson Mandela. And certainly we can never mention Nelson without mentioning Winnie Mandela. But Nelson Mandela's attempt at a multiracial government in South Africa after the murder of men, women, children, and babies, and the rape of South Africa, a criminal settler colony that has been established like Israel there in that part of the world. I cannot go along with one man, one vote. Let me say why. If someone broke into your home, Mr. Donahue, and actually bum rushed your home, and Black Boots stomped your door down, and came in and robbed and raped everyone in the household, and was able to take the wealth of your home and parlay it into an empire. This is an invader. This is an intruder. This is a murderer. This is a burglar. This is a criminal. So you have no responsibility to share your home with them after they broke in and committed the crimes that they did.
You want, you said about South Africa, we give him, that is to say, white people, 24 hours to get out of town by sundown. That's all. If he won't get out of town by sundown, we'll kill every white that ain't right that's in sight in South Africa. We kill the women, we kill the children, we kill the babies, we kill the blind, we kill the cripple, we kill them all. We kill the faggot, we kill the lesbian, we kill them all. You say, why kill the babies in South Africa? Because they're going to grow up and oppress our babies, so we kill the babies. Are you seriously presenting yourself as a man interested in the future of your people with this kind of rhetoric?
I'm just as interested in the freedom of my people as I am in the self-determination or the Kujichagulia, self-development, them being self-defining, self-respecting, and self-defending. If the white man has killed millions of our people, and you cannot deny the undeniable and indisputable and irrefutable truth, fact, proof, and history of their bloodshed there in South Africa. I said it would be merciful if they would leave. I don't agree with a government, a sham government. No man walks out of prison after 27 years and becomes the president unless there's a script and a plan behind the scenes to remove the economic sanctions from whites in South Africa, but no real plan for redistribution of the wealth. The Oppenheimers, the De Beers, and others there sucking the blood of our people. So I said, be merciful. Give them a period of time.
24 hours.
Truman gave the Japanese a period of time, but when they didn't comply, he dropped the bomb on men, women, children, and babies. I make no apology for that statement. I believe that the invasion of South Africa was an act of unprovoked war. One nation against another nation, and nations must fight for the self-determination. They had no business there, Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Dr. Khalid on police brutality.
Well, you got to, I'm here to tell you that the only way you're going to stop police brutality is you got to stand up and be brutal with this damn beast. You got to step to this cracker or it will never stop. You can moan, you can groan, you can sing, you can pray, You can recite, you can claim you know all the Quran, Old Testament, all the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran from Al-Fatiha to Al-Nas. You can know all the Medunete. You can know Maya, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity. You can name those of the Netter system. You can go and study the Odu text and substantiate your position according to Odu. You can study the Ifa, or the word, or the Akan, or the Yoruba, and run through the pantheon of the Orisha. You can call on Olodumare. You can call on Ilegba and Shango and Obatula and Oshun and Ogun and Yemonya. You can know all of that. But unless you're willing to stand up and step to this white man, we will never get out of this condition.
Now we're going to go to the mighty Dr. Sister Ava Muhammad. Peace be upon her. Peace be upon Dr. Kyle.
I hate this assumption that we hate white people in the Nation of Islam. Because nothing could be further from the truth. We have no history, no record, not one time in nearly a century of the Nation of Islam being in America, of us exhibiting any violent behavior toward white people. But you can't mess with us. And that's how sociopathic they are. They translate a black man or woman who knows who they are as dangerous. I'm dangerous because I know you're a killer.
That's right. That's right.
You want me dead. Why do you want Minister Farrakhan dead? Why do you want him silenced? You have never, in the 40 years, more than 40 years, almost 50, that he's been out here teaching, you have called him anti-Semitic, hate, blah, blah, this and that. The one name that you have never assigned to him is liar.
That's right. That's right.
See, we've been tricked into, instead of us measuring what was done to us, we're always looking at the reaction to what was done.
Yeah, that's right.
You overreacted to being shot in the head. Y'all need to get over slavery. You get over it.
That's right. That's right.
You get over it through justice.
That's right.
How am I going to get over it when to this day you're a liar and a killer?
That's right.
This movie that's out right now, World Trade Center, that tells the story of two Port Authority police officers who were called on a rescue operation after the planes went into Twin Towers. When the South Tower imploded, that's a whole other subject, how that happened. But we'll do that another day. But when that building came down, they were in it. But they were blessed that the way all these concrete wire fell, you know, there's always these air pockets and holes, and it didn't literally crush them to death. They survived, but their presence was not really detectable, and everybody on the top was so traumatized and trying to deal with what happened. So they're laying there, and the story is about them surviving. And they were located by a Marine. A Marine who was in another city saw the disaster on television like the rest of us and was moved by his spirit. So I'm going there to help. Went there in his fatigues and searched. And when everyone else had left that area, he refused to leave. And he stayed and stayed. And finally, he heard one of them knocking. They end up saving him. In the movie, it's a white man. In real life, it was a black man.
Right.
Now, am I not supposed to? A lot of Negroes would say so.
Yeah.
That's how sick y'all.
Yeah, right.
What difference does it make? Now, this didn't happen in 1899. This happened in 2001.
Right.
The man was so angry, the brother that saved those people, he came forward. There's a big story on it last week in USA Today. But you know, I say this to us. Where's Ebony Magazine? Where's Essence? How many times y'all gonna put these same movie stars on the cover of every magazine? It's like you're afraid to venture out of entertainment and put people of achievement in other fields other than who sang the best, whose movie was the best, and the bachelors, who's single, who's going with who. How many issues are you going to devote to that? 100 available women, available men, man, save it. Because if we had put it out, it would be unavoidable. But what I'm saying is the same question the minister raised with Jesus being portrayed as a white man. Everybody knows he was black, but some differences in it. If it had been white, why would you have a white person, a black person? There's a burgundy Suzuki that's parked out, Suzuki Forenza, and the owners moved it. So just to close out, sales of, and we're past color. I went through all this off on white people just to come back and say that shock therapy, that God was not angry at white people because they're white. He disliked somebody because they're white. You will not see in the Quran.
That's right.
He was angry at white people because of the action that he does hate, that you see all throughout the Quran, which is polytheism. God does not hate.
That movie is that video is skipping a lot, so I'm gonna move on from it and go to Shawajad Ali on the Donahue Show.
All right, hold on, let me get a question. Yes. Since the book has been out, have there been statistics that show that people have been cured by reading your book?
Well, the book has only been out 10 days, and I'm doing it, premiering it here on Montel's show. However, I do have a list of doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists who are ready to authenticate the things that I'm saying in this book as being true.
Has it freed
this
you?
time,
Are you free
I was
now?
free when I wrote it, which is why I was able to share the information with y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
What's bothering me here right now is they're in conflict with each other instead of looking at it as making room for embracing another opinion.
Okay.
And
Armstrong Williams is known for being one who will try to offset anything that one of us say. He's an adversary of our people. I don't care who it is. They're going to send Armstrong Williams to offset what one of us say. It can be Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. It can be Shawajad Ali, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. It don't matter. Armstrong Williams is going to try to offset and try to do this ambush journalism and pandering to those who are uncomfortable with what any of us say.
Well, I want to embrace Armstrong. See,
instead of locking heads against each other, I would think, why can't we look at her book as a way to recognize our past?
That's right.
All of us, whites and
Now, will you
blacks.
listen to the white people since you won't listen to me? Now, the issue is...
Now, wait,
Yeah, go on.
with this, though, is it in your book, you also address the fact that this is part of what's also just genetic makeup of black people, that we have to fight each other.
It's hidden in us. Well, absolutely. And what you see here is the proverbial dissatisfaction between the house slaves and the field slaves. You know, and those who have, you know, like you went to college and everything, but you didn't go to the moon, brother. You've been right here with us, and you going to college does not remove you from being affected by the post-traumatic stress of slavery. You didn't come from no other galaxy. You've been right here with us.
No, let me say this to you. You know, it's fine. Sherzad knows exactly what she's doing. That's fine. Well, she doesn't define me.
You want to discount what I'm doing based on your emotional...
What you say, call me, doesn't matter. What matters is what I answer to and what I know who and what I am. But let me say this also, though. We're not arguing. We're not at each other's throat.
No, we're not.
Not at all. No, not at all.
I love my slaves. We're not arguing.
And I love my sister. But I disagree with my sister because I think what my sister's doing is very dangerous. And I'm here to challenge her today because she has done this with her past 2 books, and she's added again.
Every time somebody try to teach y'all something, you all come out and do that.
Who
Our
made you the
so-called
teacher?
educated
Who
class.
endowed you with the gift to teach?
Okay, hold on.
Let me get one more question. I gotta go to break.
Well,
Yes, sir.
my question is, what about the slavery effect from back in Africa when the tribes used to have wars and take the other tribes to slavery? Is that part of what's affecting us as slaves or our mentality of slavery today?
Yes,
And
sir.
secondly, in your book, do you give practical ways of getting around what you say is a slave influence on us?
Right. Yes, sir. I try to, and I certainly try to also give information to help us identify the different behaviors we have that are linked to our slave history, and to identify the people around us, so we will know which ones were slaves. So that we can function in such a way so as to not be contaminated by those slavery ideas, and so we can be free. See, the movie Schindler's List does not have the same value the movie Schindler's List to the Jews has a great value. The movie Roots does not have the same value to us. It never did, because it represented things we didn't want to see, that we were embarrassed about, and that caused us so much ache and pain. And we're confused about the fact you're right.
Wait, wasn't that one? That was one of the most widely watched television programs in history of TV. And also the book Roots. And I'll tell you now. You can catch me with this one if you want. But I can also remember right before Alice Haley's death, the book's Roots itself in hard copy sold more copies to blacks than any other book in the history of...
Yet the book was plagiarism. He was sued for plagiarism, and he lost. Roots had a lot of fictional characters, and it said that he traced his roots back and all that, but it turned out to be total plagiarism.
They charged him with being a marketing genius.
Okay, all right.
That's true that it did, but I'm saying it has not had that same influence on us. We are the only people, Montel, who have a history that we won't even pass on our children most of the time, because we think it's such a stigma that it'll keep them from excelling. And as he said, make you feel like a victim. We were victimized, but we can get past it, but we can't get past it until we acknowledge what the victimization was, exactly the incident that impacted upon us so terribly that have turned us into what we are today, which is a confused group of people.
I got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to meet a gentleman who has now embraced your beliefs, and he's done that and just thrown away all his friends.
This is going to be a great campaign because it's the truth.
All right, well, I'll tell you, we'll take a break and we'll be back right after this.
Was high school
We're talking to Shahrazad Ali, and I got to ask you a couple more questions. You have some general slave profiles. This is the self-traumatic or post-traumatic stress disorder inherited from slavery, and this refers to any black person who refers to black people as you guys instead of sister and brother, or brother, you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Wears brand name clothes, so the designer's name is clearly visible. Now, what does that mean?
Well, if you look at most of our black people on television, say the entertainers and entertainers.
Okay.
Not you. You just look good every day.
Thank you very much.
But just about our entertainers and so forth, or our sports people, every time they're on television. In fact, MTV has started blurring it out on the rap videos, because all of the black people on there, they got somebody's name on their hat, somebody else on their shirt, somebody on their pants, somebody on their jacket, somebody on their shoes. None of those names represent us, incidentally, but they just like a walking advertisement. And that's an attempt to be accepted into something, to be recognized as being endorsed or being someone because you're wearing some other white person's name instead of your own. Armstrong mentioned, that his name was not Toby, it was Armstrong Williams, because his parents named him that. Well, the ancestral history of your parents, just like my parents, was one of slavery, because if not, they wouldn't have given you or me a slave master's name. Now, when I found out my real name, when I found out my people's real name, then I gave them back their name. You can name different names in America, and you expect, when you give an Italian name, you expect maybe an Italian to stand, or a Jewish name. A lot of things have changed, or an Indian name. But when somebody say Armstrong Williams, you don't know who that is. The last person you think it is somebody black if you are visiting in a foreign country. It does not sound like a black name.
Wait a minute, Montel. What matters is I know what it is.
No, that's not all that matters.
I know.
That's not all that matters.
It is. Hold on. I have two more I got to talk about. Now, wears a cross around the neck or on lapel, or hanging one on the wall in your home?
Absolutely, because Christianity and our black preachers are main vanguards of keeping slavery alive in our people and keeping us enslaved. Now
Black
they are doing that. Absolutely, they're doing that by using the same thesis out of the Bible, those same teachings that the slave master used to keep us enslaved. That was not our religion. It was one forced on us, and we don't even remember what our religion is. And they have taught us to laugh at the other religions. Then they use Christianity as the line to determine who is civilized and who is savage. It's not ours. And so they keep us enslaved by giving us slavery teachings in the name of God.
Okay, now dyes your hair blonde or dyes your hair blonde or wears blue or green contact lenses. No, okay, but dyes our hair, but saying up here. So this is a slave mentality here. It's a post-traumatic syndrome.
Many of us have, and I'm very sorry, sister, about this.
Oh, don't apologize.
Okay, many of us have been trying to emulate the people who have held us in such terror for over 400 years. And so we want to have blue eyes because we've been taught that they're the most beautiful, or the green eyes. And we want to have the blonde hair because we've been taught that that's the most beautiful. But it is not our natural hair. And if we really loved ourselves, we wouldn't find a need to try to change ourselves into images of white people in order to feel acceptable or beautiful.
Okay.
I have a number of things to say.
Sure, you got to make them short.
I'll try to be short.
Right.
Ironically, I agree with a lot of what you say, in spite of what you say about me in terms of my wearing blonde hair.
It's not just you, but
it's my choice. No, I'm saying I can address that since I'm one of those people to say that my blonde hair is really not about wanting to be white. That wasn't even a thought in my mind when I did it. It's about theater.
It's about what's in here, so you need to take this test and find out that it is about what you think.
My original comment, though, yes, and my original comment was that I agree with some of what you say, the source of which, though, I disagree. Genetically, I don't know that we're genetically disposed. I know that we pass a lot culturally from one generation to the other. From one generation to the other, I believe that we do that. I also disagree with the brother when you want to deny our discussion of slavery, because the sister is correct when she says that the longer we continue to be embarrassed, Jews are not embarrassed by the Holocaust. They perpetuate the story because they know it's a very significant part of their history. As is slavery an important part of who we are, we can change and make a transition, but you cannot go forward without knowing where you came from.
Okay, all right, hold there.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Armstrong.
That's right.
Let me say this to you. Also, you have a beautiful spirit. I don't deny slavery. I don't try to run away from slavery and ignore slavery. I use slavery. It's the greatest weapon for me to succeed. It's the greatest weapon for me to go forward because I know our history. I know the price that our ancestors paid.
But it's not just about you, bro. It's about all of us. We have to help our people. You have a responsibility as a result of being
She was addressing me, sister. She was addressing me. May I speak for myself, sister?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm saying to you, I understand our history, but I don't want to dwell in all that which is negative. I want to build on it.
We're not talking about dwelling there, but we have to deal with it and then grow from there. We're not talking about dwelling there. You have
wait a minute. I screwed you up for a question. Before I even go, I got to introduce the guest. Please welcome Jason to the show, because Jason agrees with Sherazade that blacks and whites really can't even be friends. Is that right, Jason? No, that's not correct. What is the correct premise here?
I agree with the fact that slavery is having a drastic effect on black Americans still today. But I also think that we need to stop dealing with the effect that slavery's had on black people and start dealing with so you got to deal with both sides of the coin. What makes white people that wicked for them to put somebody through that ordeal? See, we keep concentrating on the negative effects of slavery on us. Let's look at the wickedness of the people that put us into slavery so we can have a better understanding of the whole ordeal. Okay, all right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, what I wanted to say is that Ms. Ali, I believe that what she was saying basically was a good thing, that we shouldn't forget that we have been slaves and that things have happened to you, but somewhere along the line it got lost. And then he comes off on the other end, Armstrong does, saying that, oh no, we shouldn't believe it. But the whole thing is, like she said, she may have been field and he may have been house slaves or whatever. Okay. But when you come down to it, it's the same way in America today. You have people who still live in projects and they get no respect. They feel they're never going to come out of the projects. They're never going to have anything. And as a whole, when you walk into a store, we still get the same thing.
Okay, but then wait a minute. Is it because of an Armstrong and a Scheherazade Ali that people live in projects today? Isn't it not because people don't get an education?
It's not because of me. I have been working for 5 years very hard, Montel. You all know that, to try to take information to my people that'll better their condition and enhance their life. But because we've been so psychologically trained to reject any truth or any help that comes through us through our slave history, we automatically reject it. And then everybody fights me. I take the weight for a lot of our nation on these issues. But these are very serious points that we have to deal with. And no, it's not about saying that all of the white people are bad. I'm not going to make that kind of statement and offend all of the black people in America. But it is an issue of that we need to first study ourselves and to determine, you know, like what is this in us that makes us continually to perhaps love people who are in the image of a slave master. As I said, the sequel to this book for you white people is going to be, are you still a slave master? So that you can examine your ideas and find out if you're still practicing racism, even though you are not standing anywhere on a plantation with a bullwhip.
I got to come back.
I want to thank everyone for joining me this evening. I'm going to land it there. I didn't want to go too long. I want to thank my sister Sharon Walker, my brother Blue. It was good, you know, seeing you in the chat, my brother. Big Dog Philly OG, my brother Dre Cobb's Music, and anyone else who have joined me who didn't make a comment. I want to thank you for joining me this evening. I'm going to do a quick promo and then I'm going to sign off. Stand by.
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
The once goal-driven, ambitious Sapphire turns to the street life after the sudden death of her big brother Dre. Dre's best friend Devontae tries to honor his homeboy's last request of looking out for his baby sister. A rebellious Sapphire makes it very difficult for Devontae to carry out his promise.
Fire 2, the finale will be out this fall. If you want to be brought up to speed, you have to get Fire 1. Go to Amazon, go to Books, Angela King James, FYRE, and purchase Fire. Fire 2, the finale, will be out this fall. But in order for you to know what's going on in Fire 2, you have to read Fire by Angela King James. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, peace.